Okay, boys and girls, so we just finished up reading chapter 2 titled Breakup of the Lemonade Ward. Now take a minute and think about the word breakup. It means a dissolution of a unit, an organization, or a group of organizations. So who do you think actually broke up in the Lemonade War? If you said Jessie and Evan, it does seem that way. How does the word breakup relate to the main events and feelings expressed in chapter 2? So I want you to think about how Jessie is feeling. So it seems to her, they always do lemonade stands together, and now Evan has found someone else to do lemonade stands with. How does this breakup make Jessie feel? And then take for a minute Evan's feelings. How does Evan seem to feel about doing a lemonade stand with someone other than Jessie? Both of these characters have very different feelings. Now let's take a look at chapter 2 vocabulary. You can pause the video, get out your vocabulary list, and write these words down as well. I'm going to say the word and I want you to say it after me. Postponing, relief, purposely, sorry about that, determined, and bankrolling. Remember to use your dictionary to look up some of these words. Also, go back and listen again and see if you hear some of these words in chapter 2. Again, we're going to talk about drawing inferences, and that means you have to be sort of a detective when you read. So the author will give you clues as to how somebody is feeling, or what information you're supposed to gather. They just won't tell you. So you have to think about what the characters say and how they act. Let's look at Jessie for just a minute. In chapter 2, she said, "This was a puzzle," Jessie told herself, "and I'm good at puzzles." But it was a puzzle about feelings, and Jessie knows that feelings were her weakest subject. So the author wants us to know two things about Jessie. One is her strength. And what do you think one of Jessie's strengths is? Think about Jessie skipping a grade. So what do you think one of her strengths is? Right, she's pretty smart and she can figure things out. Remember, she was helping Evan with his math. Now, what about her weaknesses? What can you infer about her weaknesses? What are some things she is not really good at? If you said her feelings, yes, Jessie states that Jessie knows that feelings were her weakest subject. And she was probably having trouble understanding Evan's feelings and why Evan feels this way. Do you ever feel that way? I mean, how do you feel about feelings? Is that your weakest subject? If so, can you relate to Evan or Jessie? This chapter also has figurative language. Listen to what Mrs. Tresky said. Up in the humming cool of her office, Miss Tresky read the letter through once. "Well," she said, "this is a curveball." Do you guys know what a curveball is? If you're playing baseball and you throw a ball like a baseball that seems to curve a little bit, that is a curveball. Now, did Mrs. Tresky really throw a curveball? No, she really did not pick up Evan's baseball and throw a curveball. She's using figurative language. She's using something called an idiom. Okay, we talked about idioms earlier this year. An idiom is a figure of speech where the words do not literally mean what they say. We did, do you remember one of them was raining cats and dogs? We did an activity where you picked an idiom, you told what it literally meant, and then you told what you thought the meaning was, okay? So what do you think Mrs. Tresky meant when she said, "This is a curveball"? Yeah, she kind of meant that this was a little unexpected. Definitely not what they had planned for when Jessie skipped to the 4th grade. They were going to be in separate classes, but now that they were going to be in the same class, this is something that they did not expect. And maybe she didn't know how Evan would feel about that. Now, we're going to talk about conflict. Conflict is a problem or struggle within the story. There are 2 types of conflict. External, which means things that are on the outside, and internal, which are things that are on the inside. Let's see if we can watch this video. Okay, it won't let us click on it, so we're just going to take a minute and look. It says, while we know Mike looks sad, that's how he looks on the outside. That is an external conflict. We don't know what is making him sad or what his conflict is really about. So an external conflict is how somebody looks on the outside or behaves on the outside. But we really don't know what their internal conflict or their internal problem is, what's really going on inside their head. So let's take a minute and look at the conflict between Jessie and Evan. This is a little cartoon here. The note that Mom receives says Evan and Jessie will be in the same class next year. And Mom says this is a curveball. Evan, you and Jessie are going to be in the same class next year. You'll both have Mrs. Overton. Now, let's think about Jessie. Inside, her internal conflict is this is how she feels. Jessie felt relief flood her entire body. The same class, if she could have wished for one thing in the whole world, that's what she would have wished for. That's how Jessie is feeling on the inside, okay? Now let's take a look how Evan feels. But Evan didn't look happy. So that's how he looks on the outside. That's his external conflict. He looked angry. That's his external conflict. We can see that he is feeling that way. Why? He asked in an almost shouting voice. That's so unfair, Evan said. Here, Evan is displaying external conflict, okay? And Jessie is displaying internal conflict. Jessie is thinking about how she feels on the inside, and Evan is using words, and you can tell he's angry to see how he feels on the outside. The next thing we're going to talk about is, what do you think? Do you think children like Jessie should be allowed to skip a grade in elementary school? We have our pros and our cons chart. The pros, sorry guys. The pros are the things that would be good about skipping a grade. The cons are the things that would not be good about skipping a grade. This is where you're going to have the opportunity to write to me. You can draw this chart on your paper. It's kind of like the T-chart that we've done in the past. On this side, I want you to tell me the good things about skipping a grade. And over here, I want you to tell me some of the bad things about skipping a grade. Okay? Now, I want you to see if you can come up with 3 things. 3 things that are good and 3 things that are bad. Let's see if these links would work for us. Looks like our links are no longer working. Okay, so I want you to think of what you think, okay? Now, should children like Jessie be allowed to skip a grade in elementary school? Do you think yes, or do you think no? If you think yes, I want you to tell me about all the reasons why it would be a good idea. And if you say no, I want you to tell me why it would be a bad idea. Now remember, you can't just tell me yes or no. I want you to try to tell me at least 3 or 4 reasons why you think it would be okay for children to skip a grade or not okay. When you're finished, I want you to send me what you think. I'm very interested to hear what you think. Now we're going to go on to chapter 3, which is called Joint Venture, okay? And then we will go through these slides, but remember to listen to chapter 3 before you start.